I realized when I was going over this that one of the things that I hadn't worked into my script was to introduce myself. So I'm Patty Johnson. I'm on the congregational leadership team for the Sisters of St. Joseph of Carondelet, and I'm your presenter today. So I'm assuming everybody can see me. And Kim will let me know somehow if there's a problem. Okay, great. So let me go back to here. All right, so today what I have the great opportunity to talk to you about is a House Resolution 3969, Save Our Seas 2.0. And this is a piece of legislation that we have chosen to support during Laudato Si Week to really support the work that we have been working on all week related to single-use plastic and what plastic is doing to our world. So what we know is that every minute, the equivalent of a garbage truck full of plastic is dumped into our ocean. According to the United Nations, that is more than 8 million metric tons a year. Marine debris is a critical issue for communities and wildlife that depend on a healthy ocean. So our hope is that with our efforts, we can pass the Save Our Seas 2.0 resolution during this legislative session. And our goal is to increase the co-sponsorship of this bill, House Resolution 3969, by obtaining at least 25 more congressional representatives to co-sponsor this bill. Currently, there's 43. And probably many of you who've been very involved in legislation understand that having co-sponsors, really, it's a way for congressional representatives to indicate their strong interest and support of a bill. They might not like all of it, but they're supportive of it and they'll work with it through the process. So for us to be able to get 25 more congressional representatives, and so if you think about the breadth of the congregation and the federation across the United States, we probably have the influence to be able to convince 25 representatives to co-sponsor this. If there are more co-sponsors, it increases the likelihood of hearings being held during this pandemic and the bill moving for a vote before the close of this session. So as you know, a lot of things just are going very slowly or not moving at all in the Congress as they deal with what obviously has to be priority number one. But because this bill has already passed the Senate unanimously, okay, that means every senator agreed to move the bill forward in its current form, that it's got momentum. And I'd have to say there are a lot, like for those of you who are big time plastic and environmental activists, you could probably clearly say this bill does not do enough. And I would agree with you. This bill is a stepping stone because it's probably the only vehicle of the many bills, the many good bills that have been introduced in this legislative session related to plastics and our oceans. But this one's the one that's got the greatest likelihood of passing. And that's why we're putting our effort behind it. So up here on the right, you see Representative Suzanne Bonamici, and she's a congresswoman from Oregon. And what she has to say is our ocean is an immense natural resource, but the marine life and habitats it sustains are threatened by the pervasive and destructive plastics and debris that litter its waters and shores. Marine debris is entirely preventable, she shares, and she, along with Congressman Young, are the sponsors of this bill. They introduced it. Now, one of the most interesting things to note here is Congressman Bonamici is a Democrat. Representative Young is a Republican. And I want to keep emphasizing over and over again, the reason that this bill has a prayer to pass this session is because it has such bipartisan support. And we all know the kind of world we're living in these days. So to have bipartisan support is really important. And Congressman Young from Alaska is very concerned about the impact that ocean debris is having on the Alaskan way of life. So together, these two are the co-chairs of the Oceans Caucus. So those House of Representative folks who are most interested in the fate of our oceans, they've come together to decide what to push forward. And so they introduced this legislation that's to strengthen efforts to remove and prevent marine debris. Now, you'll probably notice that it says Save Our Seas 2.0. What is that about? Well, in 2018, President Trump signed into law the Save Our Seas Act, which is Save Our Seas 1.0. And again, I want to just point out that that was legislation that moved forward. It was the first step that bipartisan support could allow to happen. Save Our Seas 2 passed the Senate unanimously, but it did not go through the Senate process unscathed. A group of activists and senators of both parties who wanted a better bill made it more comprehensive and ambitious, with a greater emphasis on reducing plastic waste. So what does 2.0 do? Well, it strengthens the United States domestic marine debris response capability. And it's doing this through a currently functioning Marine Debris Foundation, which they set up in SOS1. This time they're adding a Genius Prize for innovation and new research to tackle this issue. So again, hopefully, partly through private donations, this bill will be able to move forward with some breakthrough research that will really help us in cleaning up the mess that we already have in our oceans. It commits us to enhance global engagement to combat marine debris. And again, you're probably sort of chuckling at this point, like, really? At a time when we're pulling out of so many international agreements, this is going to help us be engaged? Well, it's laying the framework, the legal framework that will allow the administration to do some of these things. So again, depending on who our president is in 2021, having a framework that allows for more international cooperation might be really helpful. Again, it's going to allow us to improve domestic infrastructure to prevent marine debris through new grants for and studies of waste management and mitigation. Now, again, I'm the first to tell you, this is not the bill that most plastic advocates are hoping for. However, the Ocean Conservancy feels that SOS 2.0 is a win for our oceans because it, again, proposes ways to bolster international engagement. It does include a comprehensive assessment of plastic waste in the US. Now, everyone kind of knows an assessment is not the same thing as action. But again, if we think of SOS 2.0 as laying the framework for where we want to go next, that's why we're supporting this bill. And it does take important steps to address critical recycling infrastructure, not just in the oceans, but throughout our country. And again, we've been talking about that in our discussions of, the videos, the plastic wars and the story of plastics. And so hopefully engaging the EPA to improve our domestic waste management will be helpful. And again, to address several key knowledge gaps, ranging from plastic pollution data to the effects of microplastics. And I will point out to you on our website, there's a great little 2-minute video on the effects of microplastics on our food and drinking water. So if you don't know anything about that, I'd go back to the webpage and just take the 2 minutes to watch that little video. It really opened my eyes. I had heard about this, but this made it really much more starkly clear to me. So, how do we make a difference? As the Sisters of St. Joseph, our associates, all of us, all the people who partner with us. I just want to tell you that in terms of co-sponsoring a bill, having one person contact their representative can be enough in some situations to encourage a member of the US Congress to sponsor a bill. I actually once took a group of high school kids to DC. So they weren't even voters, but they got appointments with their congressmen, and they got them to co-sponsor a bill that really, you could tell the Congress people didn't really even care about, but because they were asked to co-sponsor it, they did. So co-sponsoring this particular bill is really an easy ask. If you were going in and asking them to do comprehensive immigration reform or comprehensive ocean plastics mitigation, that would be a hard ask. But this bill, asking them to co-sponsor it, it's an easy ask. And it's easy for them to say yes to you because, first of all, they want to please you because you are their constituents and this is an election year. But secondly, this bill had bipartisan support in the Senate, and it has bipartisan support in the House. Of the 43 House of Representatives folks who have co-sponsored it, a lot of the people you're going to be approaching are their friends and colleagues. Again, it's an easy ask because it builds on Save Our Seas 1, which is viewed as successful. It's viewed as successful as long as you're, again, I'm not trying to pull the wool over anybody's eyes here. If you're a plastic advocate and you've been working on this issue hard, this is not the bill that you want, but it is hopefully a stepping stone to the bill that you want. And the work of Save Our Seas 1 has been viewed positively as a first step. The other thing why in this current situation, this bill is an easy ask is because it has minimal financial impacts. And that's going to be really important when it gets to the Ways and Means Committee, who is going to be very concerned about the amounts of money that are needing to be spent on our pandemic reform. So now, how do you contact your representative? There's many different ways. Obviously, right now, an office visit is kind of out of the question. So I think you've got 3 ways to get to them. 1 is a phone call, 2 is mailing a letter, and 3 is by email. In a perfect world, you would be able to get through to either your representative, although probably not, but probably you could get to talk with the person who's the staff person that might look at these kind of issues for the congresswoman or man. If you can talk to a live person, this may be the most effective, but it's pretty hard right now to get someone to return your calls because most of them are working remotely and they really are responding mostly to concerns that constituents have related to the pandemic. Email really may be the most effective way to get a quick action and a quick response from your congressional representative. But if you're the kind of person who really likes to send a formal letter, that you might not get a timely response, but co-sponsorship can occur later in a bill's life. So we've probably got about a 2-month window where that co-sponsorship would really matter. So if you send a letter to Congress, it'll get there in a couple days. It'll have to go through, all the screening they do at the post office because of previous anthrax scares. Then it'll go to your congressional office where it may or may not get opened up depending on if someone's there. But really, someone will be there probably within a month. And again, usually if you send a letter, you almost always get a formal response to that letter, which is nice to have. So again, I'd probably say that the email is going to be your most effective way at this point. Now, most of you probably know who your congressional representative is, but if you don't, if you just go in and Google House of Representatives, who's my representative, you'll probably come up with this link. And it'll take us, I'm going to show you, at least hopefully I'm going to show you. It takes you here to find your representative. Oh, can you see this? No. Okay, hold on a second. I have to go out. So it's just one of those crazy things about I have to go out and come back in to share my screen to show you. So here we are. Now you can see it, I'm assuming. So if I put in my zip code, which is 63111, you'll see that, and you probably again can't see this unless I go back out and come back in.
No, we could see it.
Oh, okay. Well, anyhow, you'll see that Lacey Clay is my representative. And if I wanted to go to Lacey's website, usually you can find a link right under there. I click on that and it takes me right here as Congressman Clay's office, okay? And usually on your congressman's office, you can find all the things you need, like their phone numbers, their office addresses. And if I wanted to send him if I go over here to contacts, almost all of your representatives have a place where you can send them an email to get through to him. So I'm going to go back over here now. So when you go to your congressional representative's website, again, just like I just showed you, you can get the phone number, the email, and write letters. I'm going to go to this representative's website. And again, I know I have to, I've totally lost my spot here. Are you all there? Kim, can you tell me, are you all still there?
Yes, we're all still here.
Okay.
Just silent.
All right, great. So let me just see if I can find back. I've sort of, there it is. I had lost the Zoom. Okay, so if the reason that I wanted to share with you this particular website is, so this is Roger Marshall. I just looked up who were some of the representatives where we had sisters across the country. And this is Concordia, Kansas. Now, one of the reasons that Roger Marshall is very important to us is going to make sense in just a moment. He's on the Agriculture Committee and the Science, Space, and Technology Committee. And those are two committees that are going to hear this bill, hopefully hear this bill. And the way I found out what committees Congressman Marshall is on is I went to the About column. So for most of you, if you go to the About column and you click on committees, you'll be able to see what committee your congressperson is on. Okay, so now if I, now if I head back. All right, so I have to undo all the mess I just made. Okay, sorry about that. All right. So when you go in to check on the committees that your congresspeople are on, if they're on any of these, the transportation and infrastructure, that's a committee. A subcommittee would be Coast Guard and Maritime Transportation. If your representative is on the Coast Guard and Maritime Transportation, that's a great thing for us. If they co-sponsor the bill, it signals to their congressional folks that this is something that should get a hearing and should move forward. And all of these little subcommittees, Coast Guard, Waters, Environment, Conservation and Forestry, the Environment and Climate Change, those are the committees that are going to most closely scrutinize this bill. So again, having a strong voice on those subcommittees that say this bill definitely needs to move forward is really important. Having people on the big committee like Transportation and Infrastructure, that's not a bad thing, that's a good thing. But having them on those subcommittees, that's going to be the greatest. And of course, we can't do anything about that. Those committees have already been appointed. But when you go to approach your congressman, you can highlight this. So I want you to see my congressman, Lacey Clay, is on the Natural Resources Committee. So when I went in to write him my letter that I sent to him actually today by email, I highlighted, I personalized the letter by saying, as a member of the Committee on Natural Resources, this bill will come before you for review. I hope that you can signal to your colleagues your support for this important measure by being a co-sponsor. So again, I just amended my, kind of form letter to talk about the specifics that make it relate to him. Okay, I want to stop for a second. I want to pull this up. So I have a little chart here that kind of shows where some of the congressional people are. So like if we think about Massachusetts, around the Boston area, one of their representatives, Stephen Lynch, is on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. So I would really hope, and actually I know Kristen's reaching out to Boston to see if a couple of sisters or maybe a whole bunch of sisters and associates from Boston could approach Stephen Lynch and ask him to support this bill. One of the interesting people here from Baden is Connor Lamb. He's actually on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee and the Coast Guard and Maritime Transportation subcommittee. So that's a great connection. And he actually already is a co-sponsor. So you can kind of just get a sense of where some of your congressional people might be. And again, I went through the directory and pulled out a few zip codes and put them in just to get a feel for where people might be. So again, for us in Missouri, those who are out in St. Louis County, Ann Wagner's on Foreign Affairs. Again, we have here Sam Graves from Kansas City area, St. Joe, Kansas City, who's on both of these committees. Same thing with Syracuse, New York, and Baton Rouge. Having these people on board would be really wonderful. Same thing here with Nydia Velquez. And then there was somebody I found. Oh yes, this gentleman, Carbajal, I'm sorry about mispronouncing the name. He's the vice chair of Transportation and Infrastructure. So he's from California. Again, with all your oceans, that should be kind of an easy sell to get him engaged. And the fact that he's vice chair of this committee is pretty significant. So let me just see which one of these is the right one. So hopefully these bills will get through all of these committees. This bill will get through all these committees. And then there'll be a vote on the House floor. When we know there's going to be a vote on the House floor, we're going to email all of you all and get everybody engaged to try and get all of our representatives to vote for passage. If the final bill that's come out of all of the House committees differs from the Senate, then there'll be a committee to work out the differences. And then we need to get President Trump to sign. Believe it or not, that will probably be easier than you would think because he signed Save Our Seas 1. So this would be logical. It's, again, you have to know that his senators have been, Republican senators have been in touch with him when they passed this bill. If we can get good bipartisan support from the House of Representatives, again, that will probably be likely that would be the easiest part of this effort. So that's sort of a quick overview of this bill. Again, it is a stepping stone. It is the only bill that will improve the situation in plastics that even has a prayer of passing this legislative session. And my guess is that it will pass late, like possibly even I bet you the committee work will happen between now and the election, but passage probably would be in the lame duck session. So again, that's sort of an overview of this bipartisan bill. And I would invite you now to ask any questions that you want. To ask a question, all you have to do is click on the little red microphone that's got the red line through it, and that should allow you to ask your question. The other option is if you just raise your hand, we'll see it and try to unmute you from our end. So, okay, Lynn.
Patty, is there a list of those people that have already co-signed this bill?
There is. You can. It's kind of hard to tell you how to get to it, but I'll copy it and put it on the website this afternoon. Or
Okay.
tomorrow.
Okay.
Thanks, and thanks for all this work. So if our person has already co-signed, would a good idea be to still get a hold of him? In our case, in my case, it's him, and thank him for doing it.
Yes, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that. And especially if they're on a committee, you could encourage them to sort of gig the chair about holding an online hearing. I thought I saw Judy Molaski's hand.
Yeah, Lynn, I just looked it up and all you have to do is put in HR 3969 co-sponsors, and it gives you a whole list of the 2 main co-sponsors and then the whole list of the 43. And our Jimmy Gomez from California is not one of them. So it's really easy to just Google it.
Oh, okay, thank you. I have a feeling that our Paul Tonko is probably one, but I'm going to check that out.
Yeah, we'll check it out.
Judy, can you repeat that, please?
Oh, all I did was I went on Google and did who are the co-sponsors? No, I said who are the sponsors of HR 3969
Oh,
in the House?
and you know what? Just so you, like, I had sent out one of the attachments for this. It says Save Our Seas. And on the back, you'll see the list. There's the 43. So it's also on our, it's actually on our website now, along with a sample verbiage that you can
Oh,
use
good.
for your letter. Doreen.
Patty, sometimes when your representatives, senators, representatives are sponsors and you thank them, you can ask them, what can we do to push this? Who do you recognize as somebody it would be worthwhile for us to be in contact with, even if we're not constituents, you know? And sometimes they can offer something that way.
Yeah, and it's harder and harder to get through unless someone can get you, you can always call the office. It's just that right now calling the offices is challenging. But even calling and leaving a message thanking a chair for, you know, for the work they're doing, you know, or that your congressman suggested it. That's a great idea. Any kind of advocacy that you can do that drums up the idea that in the midst of this pandemic crisis, this is still something that's pretty important. Doreen.
I also want to say that recently there were a group of us from New York State, LCWR Region 2, who were able to email the office and ask for a time when we could have a conference call with them. It took a bit of time for them to get back, not a, you know, maybe a week or so before they got back to the representative of our group, and they set up a time for a half-hour conference call. They gave us the number to use and we were on the conference call, and then we were able to leave, you know, the asks and so forth with them too. So it did happen recently since we've been on lockdown.
That's great. Marie, I saw that you were going to try to ask a question.
I was just going to say, you mentioned a person in the North Kansas City, Clay County area. That's not my district, and I suspect that my representative is very supportive of this, but is it valuable to contact them and say I'm in that region?
Sure, any efforts that you can make. And there must be some, I bet there's some sisters that are maybe living in his area. No? But yeah, that would be just great if you could get through to him too. Because again, having the committee members saying to the chair of the subcommittee or the committee, well, when are we going to meet about this? I got all these people, I got these nuns bugging me, or I got these 10 people that keep asking me, can we have a hearing about this? So the more we can, you know, the big deal is we might be 5 people, but they think of us 5 as representing, you know, like 250 people who care about this. So, so that's great. Annie.
When Judy mentioned Jimmy Gomez, it reminded me of something you probably need to be conscious of. He's someone that's already strong on the environment and strong on immigration. And so he's an idealist. And so he won't vote for the not perfect. So if we know that about our person, or we suspect it even, to acknowledge that it isn't the perfect bill, but it is a stepping stone. So I think it's important to acknowledge that in there, because if you don't know your person, you're not sure. And if I were to just write to him, he wouldn't do anything with it. He'd write you back later and say, a reason I'm not doing this is, you know.
Yes.
So I think from the very beginning to acknowledge it isn't the perfect bill, but it's an important first step, or second
again,
step.
I think the perfect addition to that is to say that our congregation and and the Federation of the Sisters of St. Joseph are going to stand behind this issue for many years. So, so when he introduces the perfect bill, we'd be happy to advocate strongly for that.
Yeah.
Are there other hands I'm not seeing?
Patty,
Yes, Sean.
if I looked, I might already know the answer to this question, but are you going to put the PowerPoint up?
I could have, oh, actually what we did is we're recording it. And so it will be on the website by noon tomorrow.
Okay, but could you also put the PowerPoint up, because that's easier to deal with when you're writing a letter?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
I thought I saw somebody, Kathy Crowley.
Patty, I just was thinking, like, say in the 6311 area, there's a lot of people. And my sense is that we all ought to just try contact as opposed to coordinating, because we don't want them to hear from just one well-spoken person. We want to hear from lots of people. So not that we wouldn't talk to one another when we say, hey, I heard this, and or he said this, or whatever it may be. We would communicate among ourselves, but lots of us need to talk to the office. Is that correct?
I would 100% agree. And again, when we think about Missouri, we're kind of far from the ocean. So you could see why it might not be a priority. But we know that our congressman cares about the environment. And so having him aware that a lot of his constituents care about this is really important.
And we have sisters throughout the entire United States in all these districts.
Yes.
So there's a lot of us.
Yes. And again, if you look at the sponsors, some are from all over the place, but a lot of them really are on the coasts. So those of us in the middle of the country, it would behoove us to try and get more, more engagement. Kitty. Kitty, did you want to say something? You have to unmute yourself. Okay, I've unmuted you.
Okay. If I remember correctly, you said that the financial impact would not be significant, or would be. So is it primarily about raising awareness, or I can't imagine that it wouldn't be a very costly project?
So one of the things is that a lot of the work is done through a foundation, and the foundation is supported by a lot of donations to it. So any government bill has some implementation costs, but this doesn't have a significant, and again, as the bill moves forward and they get it into final form, they'll calculate what they think the cost is. But the difference is this will not have a significant cost that would raise red flags for fiscal conservatives.
Great.
Doreen.
I have another question. Have you prepared any kind of a leave behind, you know, paper for the representative or for the Congress? Is there anything besides the letter, you know, like the points that?
There's an information sheet on the website that you could use.
I do see that. I'm looking at that. Yeah. Okay. Okay, and to our New York people, Tonko is not a sponsor of it on this list, at least so far. Yeah.
Okay, Mary Jo?
Yeah, you've mentioned about, you know, the power, the corporate power of all the Sisters of St. Joseph. Can we, if I write my individual letter, can I say I, as a member of the Sisters of St. Joseph, have so many people behind me, or do I just do this as my individual thing and say, well, I'm a member of the Sisters of St. Joseph? Do you understand my question?
Sure. Definitely the congregational leadership team knows that we're advocating for this. I think you're always safer to talk about it from a personal point of view of in dialogue with the sisters of my congregation. You know, we are supportive of this, but I personally am asking you to co-sponsor this.
Thank you.
So so the other thing is, a lot of you are in touch with prayer group, sharing of the heart groups that you're with, prayer groups, different Zoom groups that are just coming together because of the COVID. So I'd encourage you to ask them. Again, as I said earlier, this is an easy ask. When we move forward, you know, the next ask about plastics, it will be a hard ask. So to begin this relationship with something that that is easy for your congressional representative to agree to is a nice start to a relationship that we're going to want to keep in the loop as we really try to do something about single-use plastics. So here's my email address. Tomorrow is our day of action, where we're hoping that people will just contact their Congress people. I am available. Just send me an email if you have any questions about, you know, are you contacting the right person, or are you giving the right message, or any way that, like, I know for a lot of you this is old hat, but for those of you who are novices, I'd be really happy to guide you through your interactions with your congressional representative. So you can feel free to contact me. That will be my highest priority tomorrow to follow up with you. And there's nothing magical about tomorrow. You can keep asking people next week to contact their congressman or woman. So, any last questions? Thank you very much for taking the time to be together here this afternoon. And again, we really remember our goal. We hope to have 25 new sponsors, and I'm going to be tracking it between now and October 1st so that I'll be reporting back to you if we achieved our goal.